our third generation medicine man made the point that if we would have asked his grandfather why they would have gone through such Herculean efforts to move all this debris, right? They had to bring all of this from way down in the valley up here to build this edifice. It was because a portal opened, a doorway, and the giants came up out of the earth. And around the same time that Moses is on the other side of the world writing, and there were giants in the earth in those days. So it was a testament that they were trying to build something here to defend themselves from against something that was incredible, astonishing.
The traditional narrative concerning the Anasazi is that over a long period of time, 9 years, they gradually migrated away from this area because of drought. The problem is you don't build a fortified position with towers to defend yourself from drought. But what we're finding here, and what we see evident in the ruins, is a sudden disappearance. This was a people group that was in a very defensive position. They were in a defensive mode. They were fearing for their lives, defending themselves against some kind of external threat.
Well, another thing, that official narrative that they slowly migrated out of the area over a 9-year period of time, the reason that doesn't work is because when the first archaeologists came in here, they found these rooms packed with salt, with weapons, with the little boards that they carried their babies around on. These are not things you would have left behind if you slowly migrated out in the area. They were literally gone overnight.
And even the archaeological evidence from different digs around here is they could never account. The anthropologists had a hard time figuring why the brutality that's associated with the disappearance of the Anasazi. It's almost like they were eaten on the run. The news is coming out that the evidence that the archaeologists first were basing some wrong conclusions on has now been set aside. This was the violent overthrow of the Anasazi.
To get to the bottom of the story of the Anasazi, we had the rare opportunity of meeting with a third generation medicine man by the name of Dr. Don Mose, who is an academic in the Navajo Nation. And I asked him specifically what happened with the Anasazi, these legendary pre-Pueblo Indians that lived around Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, but they seemed to disappear literally overnight. And so Dr. Mose begins telling us the story that is the sanitized version that you might even hear from some of the State Parks Department guides about how there was an extended drought. And so they slowly migrated out of the Four Corners area of the United States and later on became the Hopi, the Zuni, other Pueblo Indians of today. But when I challenged that and said, well, why then, if they slowly migrated out of the Four Corners area, did they leave behind everything that would have been important to them? And when I asked him that question, he looks right into the camera and he says, well, I should not tell you this, that if you would have asked my great-grandfather, here's the story that he would have told. And then he begins telling this epic, if you will, of a time before time when doorways in the Four Corners area of the United States opened and giants came up from out of the earth and began persecuting and cannibalizing the Anasazi, and the Anasazi fled for their lives. And this was the first great clue that we had, that if we went back to the original stories of the Pueblo Indians, we would receive an entirely different narrative that involved the arrival of this reptilian being that deceived the Anasazi, that taught them how to use their kivas for pharmakia, what Dr. Mose called sorcery. And in those kivas that were excavated around Chaco Canyon, artifacts were found that indicated ritual cannibalism had started among the Anasazi. Teeth bones, finger bones, found inside their kivas, which Dr. Mose said was a kind of witchcraft that led the Anasazi to opening these doorways of the earth through which the giants came. This is part of Chaco Canyon. Everybody today, the experts all say that this was probably the capital of the Anasazi. And also, you know, what I found interesting was how some of our Indian guides and members of the tribes, they also refer to this as the Babylon of the Anasazi history. Very mysterious stuff was going on here, and part of that we might assume was happening inside these kivas. Now, we just learned that there were more than 40 of these very, very large kivas. These are some of the largest kivas I've ever seen. What is a kiva? The kivas were religious edifices. Some of the tribes would only allow the men to go in them, and it was in there that they did rituals, they did prayers, they put themselves into contact with other dimensional entities, the kachinas. Inside the kiva is a doorway called the sipapu. It's a mystical doorway that can be opened if the rituals are performed correctly. Dr. Don Mose told us that story of the portal opening in the Four Corners area. This reptilian being comes through. But key to this, he said this thing started teaching the natives when they went into their kivas to practice sorcery, to practice witchcraft, right? And that was when he said, through the sipapu, through the holy doorways that are in the kivas, maybe a mystical doorway opened. But suddenly, these very terrifying entities, these beings, including the giants, emerged onto the earth and began cannibalizing, destroying. In the petroglyphs, even right here in Chaco Canyon, are the giant six-toed footprints and six-fingered fingerprints at a place called San Canyon Pueblo, not far from here. Evidence of violence, of people being torn literally from limb to limb, children, women. None of this matches tribal warfare the way that we would have understood it. This was something entirely different that happened here, but in those kivas, they found strange artifacts. In each of the kivas, 1 finger from the hand, 3 teeth from the mouth. It was sorcery. It was black magic, we would call it, right? And it evidently did open a doorway.
So according to ancient Navajo tradition, the Anasazi people opened some kind of a portal and unleashed something dark and sinister on the earth, possibly in this very location.
I would not say that it's Navajo tradition. What I would say is that some of their medicine men would admit that that is actually what happened here.